Hello everybody, I'm Eternal Flame here, and today I am here with a brand new theory about Yuji Itadori, mainly because of what was said about him in the most recent chapter of Jujutsu Kaisen. Because after this chapter, I think we actually can know what Kenjaku intended for Yuji to be, and why Kenjaku has such high expectations from him, thanks to this one statement alone that really helps to tie things together as the reason for why Kenjaku created Yuji, as well as why Yuji has such massive amounts of potential. Without further ado, let's actually get into this theory. Now, this theory is based on something that was recently established within the new chapter of Jujutsu Kaisen, where in both translations, Sukuna compares Yuji to Maki, saying that Maki, unlike Yuji, had fully scraped away all curse energy, becoming a true void. Now, there has always been an interesting amount of comparison between Maki and Yuji, all the way to the beginning of the series, where Megumi had said is Yuji like Maki, just because of how physically strong and fast he actually was, as well as Megumi later on saying in Goodwill that if all the students were to fight him without curse energy at once, including Maki, who doesn't already use curse energy, that Yuji would win. And even more interestingly, we see Yuji and Maki get compared to each other in a meta-narrative level, back in chapter 215 when Yuji and Maki both fought against Sukuna at once, where Yuji was somewhat relative to Maki, but Maki was the clear superior of the two of them against Sukuna. Even how both of them got a very massive power-up is actually very similar in terms of themes, where they both got their first massive power-up through losing someone incredibly close to them, as well as losing something in exchange for more power, where Maki lost Mai, and in exchange for Maki losing Mai, all of the curse energy that the two of them had was taken away with Mai, allowing Maki to get the full strength and full power of the heavenly restriction, allowing all that curse energy to be shaved off of her, and in exchange her body to reach its physical peak and physical extreme. Of course, Maki was not in a complete mindset by this point and ended up completing her mindset later on, but save that thought for later into the theory, as now we go back to Yuji, who Yuji in 214 got a massive power-up in exchange for Sukuna no longer being inside of his body and going to Megumi, losing both Sukuna and Megumi. And of course, Sukuna is not someone close to him at all, but in exchange for losing Sukuna, he got a massive physical power-up, down to the point where Sukuna was even questioning where this strength came from and was surprised that Yuji was able to survive that punch. Now, my speculation is Yuji was able to get that massive power-up due to the fact that his soul was mostly working to suppress Sukuna the entire time. After all, he did have 15 fingers worth of Sukuna's power inside of him all the time, but now that he had full access to his soul, he was able to access what he should have been at his full power. Now, the important thing is this: the two of them were able to get power through a similar method, which was in exchange for losing something, they were able to awaken the full power that they should have been at the entire time. Of course, there was one part of them missing, one part of their mindset being completely wrong that was limiting them, but they were able to, in exchange for losing someone, access their full power. Now, you might be wondering, am I about to ask, does Yuji have a heavenly restriction? And I'm gonna say yes and no. I do think Yuji has a heavenly restriction, but I don't think it's the same type of heavenly restriction that Maki and Toji had, where Maki and Toji don't have any curse energy at all, and in exchange for that, they have a massive physical strength, as well as several enhanced senses that even allow them to see the soul and have precognition. However, we know for a fact that Yuji does still have curse energy, and I do think that Yuji is intended to still have curse energy as well, as Sukuna directly calls out Yuji in specific. I believe Sukuna is calling out Yuji as the halfway point between Maki and himself, the halfway point between a perfect sorcerer and a perfect heavenly restricted body, which that is what I think his heavenly restriction is for. That Yuji Itadori does not have access to his own innate curse technique in exchange for the massive amount of talent he has in curse energy, as well as his massively strong physical body. Furthermore, this heavenly restriction would also make Yuji a perfect curse technique sponge, which is why he would have the eventual ability to use the techniques of things that are inside him. It's why he can use the curse technique of all his brothers and use blood manipulation so well. Now, I think this being Yuji's heavenly restriction does actually make sense with a lot of things in Jujutsu Kaisen. For one example, it would explain why Yuji never awakened a curse technique, considering his mother had a curse technique of anti-gravity, as well as him likely coming from another side of sorcerers on the Itadori family side of things, purely because of the fact that we know that Yuji's grandpa was actually aware of who Kenjaku was and not to trust them, which means that both sides of their family were more than likely sorcerers. Stack that with the fact that Yuji is so innately talented at learning basic applications like learning the Divergent Fist, figuring out how to control his curse energy near immediately the second that Todo taught him how to do it properly, figuring out how to do the Black Flash and then tying the record, and finally learning RCT under a month, while also learning all the applications for his curse technique that he had been learning through blood manipulation. The fact that he has all of this talent and still doesn't have access to a curse technique at all, despite how innately talented he is, does make a lot of sense if it were because of a heavenly restriction making him this talented. It would also fit very, very well into the reason why Sukuna could potentially call him creepy. After all, we know that Sukuna considers Maki the complete opposite of himself, the antithesis of what it means to be a sorcerer. So imagine how he would feel about someone who tries to take both paths. The path of sharpening the body, of strengthening the body and making it perfect, while also trying to become a perfect sorcerer. That would creep him out because it would null and void the entire reason of why he became so strong. It would be an absolute spit in the face to everything that Sukuna stands for. It would also explain why Kenjaku has such high expectations for Yuji Itadori to begin with, because Yuji was intended to be the perfect melding of both curse energy manipulation as well as the physical body and physical strength. This being the heavenly restriction and explanation for why Yuji is so powerful also makes a lot of sense with something else that Gojo said early on in the series, which is that 80% of your innate potential comes from your curse technique. So Yuji might have actually had an incredibly broken curse technique, but when Kenjaku had Yuji, he sacrificed that curse technique, in exchange turning him into the perfect hybrid of a sorcerer and the physical body. Now this could also fit very well for the Sukuna finding Yuji creepy line if Yuji is actually made from his twin brother, like a lot of us have been speculating that Yuji and Sukuna are twins, whereas Sukuna would remember the curse technique that his brother originally had. But seeing that Yuji no longer had that curse technique and that curse technique would be sacrificed, which would help even more for the line of Sukuna saying that Kenjaku really does the creepiest of things. Which this could also help to explain another reason of why Sukuna absolutely hates and despises Yuji. Not just because of Yuji's unbreakable resolve, but also because of the fact that Yuji no longer has that curse technique that belonged to his brother, which to someone like Sukuna, he would see curse energy and curse technique like your identity itself, because that is how he views sorcery, as your identity, as what decides whether you're strong or not, as what decides whether you can get what you want and if you're worthy to get what you want. So you might be wondering this now. Okay, cool, Yuji doesn't have a curse technique because his curse technique was sacked in exchange for his heavenly restriction body, which allows him to have high skill in terms of sorcery as well as high skill in terms of his physical body, and be able to get other people's curse techniques through being the vessels of other things or just being a curse technique sponge. What does this ultimately mean, and how is this going to help at all for Yuji being able to battle against Sukuna? Well, in a similar way to how Maki was not able to use the full strength of her own heavenly restriction because of her mindset, I actually think that Yuji in a similar mindset is holding himself back because he doesn't have the full proper mindset to access that heavenly restriction. After all, it's been long since established that having a proper mindset can change the fields of battle entirely. For example, Megumi Fushiguro had gone from getting completely destroyed by a finger bearer to having a change in mindset to risk everything without throwing his life away, which allowed him to awaken a domain expansion while not fully complete and being an incomplete domain. Through that, he was able to completely destroy the finger bearer and end up defeating the finger bearer. Or Yuta Akotsu, who Yuta Akotsu, when gaining the mindset of wanting to make sure everyone he cared about was protected, that the new friends he had made along the way could all live, was able to grow massively in his battle against Geto. That love that he had through his mindset allowed him to push past his limits and reach an entirely new level. Or Maki Zenin, who went from getting destroyed by Naoya's speed and being overwhelmed by that speed to being able to dodge that speed effortlessly, thanks to a precognition and properly awakening against Naoya. But even if you don't want to take my words for it, you can take Gojo's words for it as well, where Gojo had directly called out Megumi's mindset and said that if Megumi didn't change his mindset, he wouldn't even have a chance at surpassing Nanami. Now you might be wondering, where does Yuji fit into all of this? Well, Yuji certainly has a good mindset, I will say that. A mindset as well as will so powerful that not even Sukuna can actually break that will. Something that completely annoys Sukuna down to the point where he is not going to kill Yuji until he breaks that will. However, in spite of that, Yuji actually had a very, very similar mindset to Megumi. Not the exact same, but the very similar one, where both Yuji and Megumi thought that they could solve their problems through eventually dying. However, Yuji's belief was that he could take Sukuna out with him for a long time, that he was a cog in the machine that would eventually take Sukuna out. Of course, it was specific to Sukuna, But it was a similar mindset to Megami's, where Megami had believed that he would be able to solve every single issue so long as he just summoned Mahoraga in exchange for his own life. Now, Yuji doesn't have the exact same mindset, but he has a very similar mindset, where he also ended up abandoning his own identity in exchange for being a cog in the Jujutsu system. And while against Mahito that was what was needed at the time, now that is not what is needed. I believe Yuji needs to awaken and go past this mindset. I believe that Yuji needs to remove this mindset and get a better one in order for him to start evolving, start gaining the full power of his heavenly restriction. In a similar way to how the Maki versus Naoya battle ended up going, where Maki was not able to achieve her full power until she was able to see the world differently, until she was able to truly be free. I believe Yuji needs that same change in mentality, a mentality where he doesn't believe that his death can solve every single issue, in a similar way that Megami needed to change his mentality, needed to imagine different ways that he could win. After all, that's what allowed Megami to be able to fight against much stronger people than himself, like Toji Fushiguro. Now, even with this awakening and Yuji starting to rapidly evolve through this, I don't actually think this is going to be enough, because I don't actually think that anyone should be able to beat Sukuna in a 1v1. However, I do think that this should be the best way in order for Yuji to evolve, assuming that this is the heavenly restriction that he actually has. After all, we've already seen rapid growth from sorcerers not built to evolve, through changing their mindset, through focusing on that mindset. Yuta had gotten stronger several times throughout his battle against Geto. Megami had been able to awaken a domain expansion. Maki was able to awaken a new eye. Of course, not literally a new eye, but the ability to see things that she couldn't see before, as well as fully utilize the strength for heavenly restriction. All of these people who were not created with the intention of evolving were able to evolve at such a rapid rate. But if this was the reason why Kenjaku had created him, to create something that could rapidly evolve, which would fit very well with Kenjaku's motivations of being able to create something that even he couldn't control, and what better thing is there than something that rapidly evolves like that, then it would be absolutely perfect for Yuji, as well as the fact that Sukuna is going to give him the opportunities to evolve, because like I mentioned before, Sukuna does not want to kill Yuji at all. Or well, he does, but he first wants to break Yuji's resolve completely. And I think that's going to be his downfall. I've actually already made a video about this in the past, so go check out that video when you're done here. But this would also work well with Sukuna's statement, and it would work well with Kenjaku as a character and why he even created Yuji. Because the reason why he created Yuji is still somewhat in the air. Like, we know that he wanted Yuji to be the vessel of Sukuna, but we likely know that it wasn't permanent as well. It's just, they were supposed to coexist and co-live with each other, so it's super weird. We still don't know the reason why Kenjaku even created Yuji up until this point, up to this day. So if this is the reason why, to turn Yuji into this beast of evolution, it would make a lot of sense, at least in my opinion. But yeah, that's my theory on why I believe that Yuji had lost his curse technique through heavenly restriction, and in exchange gained the ability to massively evolve through his curse energy manipulation, as well as his physical body, which would allow him to push the curse techniques that he has inside of him through becoming the vessels of other things to its limits. However, I do want to hear what you guys think about this in the comment section down below. Do you guys think this theory is a little bit too far? Do you guys think this is possible? Do you guys think this might be the only way to actually stand a chance against Sukuna? Tell me your thoughts in the comment section down below. I'm going to see y'all later. Peace out.